Right now, 213,072 Americans live inside the regional hazard footprint of a volcano the United States Geological Survey rates as a very high threat. Most of them have never heard the word lahar. The volcano is one of 4 in Oregon monitored at the highest threat level in the country. The ground above its magma source has been rising for over 2 decades. Here is how we got here. In 1997, the ground 3 miles west of South Sister began to rise. Nobody noticed. There were no instruments out there capable of seeing it. The forest looked the same on a Tuesday as it had on a Monday. By the year 2000, the rate had hit 5 centimeters a year, the speed of a fingernail growing, across a circle of forest 12 miles wide. By 2001, USGS satellite analysts reprocessed older INSAR data and found 5 centimeters of uplift that had already silently accumulated over 4 years. The bulge had been happening for half a decade before any human knew it existed. By October of that same year, a field crew helicoptered a continuous GPS receiver and a seismometer onto the summit of the Husband, a peak 7,524 feet high, 1¼ miles from the dead center of the bulge. The instruments were bolted to a steel cabinet anchored to a basalt outcrop. They have been continuously transmitting data ever since. By 2017, the rate had crashed to ½ centimeter a year. Every major outlet declared the South Sister bulge finished. It was winding down. The consensus paper was being written. Then, in the summer of 2020, the bulge inhaled again. 2.2 more centimeters stacked on top in 14 months, after 20 years of slowing down. As of 2026, the cumulative uplift sits at 30 centimeters. Almost 12 inches of fresh rise across a patch of ground larger than the city of Portland. That is the science. That is what is real. The viral videos take that science and turn it into something else. The YouTube title read, "Three Sisters Caldera Cracks Open, 213,072 Americans on Death Zone Alert." That was the title of the May 3rd YouTube video. It frames the uplift as imminent. It frames the population number as a body count waiting to happen. It frames the mainstream media as having buried the story since 2017. None of that is what the data says. Now zoom out. The Three Sisters are a cluster of stratovolcanoes in the Cascade Range, which runs from British Columbia down through Washington and Oregon into Northern California. Stratovolcanoes, also called composite volcanoes, are considered some of the most dangerous volcanoes on Earth. The Cascades have numerous stratovolcanoes, including Mount Rainier in Washington, which the National Park Service calls the most dangerous volcano in the lower 48. The Pacific Northwest is seismically active. Many of these volcanoes sit near cities and towns. The real risk is not invented. It is mapped, modeled, and monitored. The USGS rates the Three Sisters as very high threat on the National Volcano Early Warning System scale. That is the second highest tier on the agency's national list. Very high and high threat categories require the most robust monitoring coverage. This means volcanic systems like the Three Sisters are among the most closely watched by scientists in the entire country. 4 Oregon volcanoes share that very high threat rating: Crater Lake, Mount Hood, Newberry, Three Sisters. Here is the detail buried in the data. A very high threat rating is not a forecast that an eruption is coming. It is a measure of 2 things multiplied together: how dangerous the volcano is when it erupts, and how many people, structures, and pieces of infrastructure are nearby and could be hurt if it does. A volcano in the middle of empty desert can be deeply violent and still rate low threat because nobody lives there. A volcano next to a growing city can be relatively mild and still rate very high threat because the consequences of any event are enormous. The Three Sisters rate very high because Bend exists, because Sisters exists, because Roberts Field exists, because the Pacific Crest Trail crosses the bulge directly, not because the magma is about to surface. Here is what is not making the viral videos. Dr. John Major, scientist in charge of the United States Geological Survey Cascades Volcano Observatory, has said on the record that the uplift process at the Three Sisters has probably been going on for a long time, and that scientists just never had the technology to see it before. The bulge is not new. The instruments are new. Before INSAR satellites, before continuous GPS, before the seismic network on the husband, ground deformation of this magnitude across a 12-mile circle of forest would have been completely invisible. A hiker could have walked straight across it and felt nothing. The trees would not have noticed. The creek would have kept running. Major has also said directly that the kind of change happening on the ground out there is not the kind of change he and you and I would stand out there and detect at all. That is the actual quote. From the actual scientist running the actual observatory, the viral video version is louder. It is also wrong. Here is what that means in human terms. A family in Bend on a Sunday morning is reading a comment on social media that says their city is 2 weeks away from being wiped off the map. Their kid is watching a video with the words "Death Zone" in red letters across the thumbnail. Their parents and sisters are getting forwarded another video about a caldera that does not exist in the form the video describes. There is no Three Sisters caldera in the way the title implies. The deformation source is 6 to 7 kilometers below the surface. It is fluid, possibly magmatic, possibly hot water and gas, and it is pushing the rock above it up like a hand pressing into a mattress from below, slowly, over decades. That is not a crack opening. That is geology working on a timeline most humans never see directly. And here is the part the rumor leaves out entirely. The real hazard at the Three Sisters does not require an eruption. South Sister is glaciated. 5 separate times in the last century, glacial moraine dams above the mountain have failed without warning, sending walls of mud and boulders down its flanks. These events include Collier Lake in the early 1940s, Diller Lake in 1970, a flash flood on October 7, 1966. 2 more outbursts left scarring on the upper drainages and very little in the official record. None of them reached the town of Sisters. The next one might. United States Geological Survey Lahar models give the town of Sisters between 30 minutes and 1 hour of warning from initiation to arrival. Picture a waitress on a Tuesday morning in downtown Sisters hearing a sound she has never heard. By the time she walks to the door, the front of the wave is already inside the city limits. That is the actual threat, not the cinematic caldera. The glacier-fed creek with a dam made of rocks sits above 3,500 people who have never heard the word Lahar. And further out, 23 miles east, downwind, sits Bend. 109,389 people live inside the urban growth boundary. It is the fastest growing city in Oregon this decade. Models show Bend could receive 1 to 2 inches of abrasive volcanic glass during a rock mesa scale explosive phase. That ash can disable small engine vehicles, short out heating and cooling systems, close Roberts Field for weeks, and contaminate the Bridge Creek water supply. That is the realistic worst-case scenario, not a city vanishing in an afternoon. Instead, a city dealing with ash, a closed airport, a contaminated reservoir, and a long cleanup measured in months. The sentence that should make every emergency manager in Central Oregon put down their coffee is this: the most likely failure mode here is not the one the viral videos are selling. What happens next is the part nobody can answer. The uplift could stall again, the way it almost did in 2017, and quietly resume in 15 years. The bulge could go silent for a generation, and nobody outside the observatory would notice. The fluid plume at 6 kilometers depth could turn out to be hot water and gas, not magma. In that case, the failure mode could be a small steam blast where a hiker is standing. A phreatic explosion like the one that tore through Yellowstone's Biscuit Basin in July 2024 would do real damage, but only to people inside a few hundred meters of the vent. Or the system could keep refilling. The 2,000-year analog event left a 5-mile fissure of black glass on South Sister's southeast flank, the Devil's Chain, and 20 separate domes and coulees in a single sequence. That is the worst case the geologic record describes. Major has said there would be a lot more signs before that, more quakes, faster uplift, gas. He has also said the process has probably been going on for a long time, and the instruments to see it are only now catching up. Both sentences are true. Neither matches the video titles. The thing on Ben's doorstep is not a movie volcano. It is a glacier-fed creek with a dam made of rocks sitting above 213,000 people who deserve real information, not a thumbnail in red letters. And right now, on a steel cabinet anchored to a basalt outcrop on a peak called the Husband, a green light is blinking once every 30 seconds. The ground is still rising, the instruments are still listening, and the volcano that everyone said was finished is breathing in.